Okay. I want you to write a heading. Complete the square. If you switched off the lights. I thought it went out there again that I have to go and switch it on. Because if it goes off there, then Lindy is coming in. Okay, sharp. Complete the square. Once again, we're going to do an easy one. One that can be factorized with a haki-haki. Okay. Now, while you're writing this down, I just want to explain to you again what an investigation is about. An investigation is supposed to be on work that you haven't done. Like you did, ne? Okay. I lead you to discover something. Because they say when you discover something yourself, then you will always remember it. Okay? So that's why the department make us, okay, have you do a investigation. I am not allowed to give you a project now to do. You must do an investigation for marks. Okay? So, when I do all of this now and you go through the investigation, you will say, now you know it, it's so easy. Obviously, this is what I'm supposed to do. That's what it's supposed to be like. Okay? So, don't go and get all upset that I have assessed you on something that you haven't done. It is true. That is what it's supposed to be. Okay, let's just haki-haki factorize this, just so we know what we expect our answers to be. Okay. If I were to factorize it, I'd have x and x. Factors of 5 that give me 4 when I subtract? 5 and 1. Which one gets the minus? And therefore my answers will be x equal to 5 and x equal to negative 1. That's the answers I expect to get. Okay. But now we're going to do it. You can write or. Okay. And do you remember the nice way of writing or is when it's a bakkie, and writing and is when it's like a for and. Good. Alright. When I complete the square, we saw yesterday, we're going to say x squared minus 4x. And do you remember then we leave a space open? Then we write minus 5. Then we leave another space open equal to 0. Right. Task 1 and 2 and 3 helped us to find the magic number that I want to be there. What's the magic number going to be? Okay, I can hear you all have it. Do you see what the investigation did? You already know it like that, ne? So we say it's 4 divided by 2, which is 2 squared will give me 4. When I add 4, you must always think of a justice scale when you see an equation, eh? It means whatever is on the one side is equal to whatever is on the other side. Now, when I look at it right now, I've added a 4. So the scale is tipping. Right? That's not allowed. That's why I do the inverse calculation of subtracting 4 as well. And then it's back to being equal to each other. Now this first 3 terms is a perfect square. Now the reason we wanted it to be a perfect square is because a perfect square can be factorized to look like a bracket square. It's only a perfect square that can be factorized like that, nothing else. The others have got 2 different brackets. So when I factorize it, and now I need you to look carefully because we didn't have one like this yesterday. You factorize it by taking the square root of the first term, the sine of the second term. Yesterday, all of them was positive. That's why it didn't cross us, okay? So remember, this one's sine and then this one's square root. Okay. And then I simplify these ones on the outside. What's negative 5 minus 4? And I take it to the other side. Square root both sides. What's this side answer? Net 3. Dankie Mamelu. Plus and minus 3. And then you don't have to show this equation. I just want to show you because I saw some kids making a mistake. They would say the 2 goes over, then they say the answer is plus minus 5. But remember, you have x minus 2 equal to 3, and then x minus 2 equal to negative 3. When you solve this one, it gives you 5, yes. But when you solve this one, it gives you negative 1. Okay, and that was the answers we got at the Haki as well. So do you see how much an investigation actually helps, ne? Okay, now you understand it very good, although you were wanting to cry yesterday. Okay, you can write example 2. Just want to see how many examples I did. Example 2. What is wrong? Iso. What do you want to do? You want to go toy?
Don't give her.
Ja, daar's nie eers 'n bietjie snot in jou nie. Julle mors julle tyd, ek sê vir julle. I'm not gonna do extra classes. Né? Wat? Then she can call to the office. She will call the office. Sit, you are wasting time. Okay? Remember our first step when we did this was always to remember to get it into standard form. So just remember that it must be ax squared plus bx plus c. If it's not, just shuffle it so that it's in the right format. Now you can see that this one is different than example 1. And the reason it's different is because of this 3 in front. Okay, so this one is still a rather simple one. I'm going to show you how to do it. And then we're going to do one that's a little bit more tricky. Now, there was also a question in the Afrikaans class of why we do it in a certain way. Now, I want to tell you, there will be different occasions where we use the completing of the square. We can use the completing of the square to solve an equation. And when we're going to get to the quadratic functions, the graphs, we are going to use this completing of a square to take a quadratic trinomial from the ax squared bx c format and change it to this format. Now you will notice here, this is not an equation. This was an expression being changed. So there is a reason why I teach it to you in one specific way. But I am aware there are other ways. But when we do it in this way, we don't have to use a different method for when it's an expression and another method for when it's an equation. We can use the same method straight through. Okay. So, the step that must be added now is we are going to take out the value of a, right there, take out A out of term 1 and 2. Okay, so you're going to take out the A out of term 1 and 2. You see, not 3 as well. Only term 1 and term 2. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. It is B, but I am referring to term 2. Term 1 and term 2. A, B. Okay, sure. So I take out a 3 in common. Do you hear that's police, that's not people? Yeah, good. Just listen. I take out a 3 out of term 1, then it becomes x squared. And I take out a 3 out of term 2, then it becomes minus 8x. Are you all happy with that? What did I do to get the 3 out? What I divided. That's important because we're going to do the inverse in a minute. If it goes out of the bracket, we divide it. Ne? Okay. Now, do you remember that C value didn't do anything? It's still not going to do anything. I'm going to close this bracket and then I'm going to write that plus 11 here. So it still looks the same. I have a space there for something to add and I have a space there for something to subtract. Okay. Can you tell me what is the magic number that I want to add or subtract there to? Now I'm trying to make this a perfect square. Ne? It's plus 16. And now what am I going to subtract? Wait before you write it. You are saying minus 16. Just look here quickly. I'm showing you this so that you understand why it happens. If I go multiply this out, it's 3x squared minus 24x plus 48 plus 11 minus 16. I added this, I subtracted that. Is this thing equal? No. Okay, so I asked Refilwe, what happens when I take the 3 out? And she said, it divides. Next, if you want to get out of the bracket or if you take it out, you divide of it. So, or to get into the bracket, let's say it like that, for the number to get. Okay, I'm going to go on. You can tell. Okay, for something to get into the bracket, you divide. For something to get out of the bracket, you times. Okay, make a note of that for yourself here. For something to go into the bracket, you divide. For something to go out of the bracket, you times. Okay, and when I say you times, we're going to times with the number that is the coefficient of the bracket. Okay, so for this one to get into the bracket, we divide it with 3. So if I want x squared to get out of the bracket, I'm going to have to multiply it with 3. No, it makes sense. We actually know that. I must remember to make a star on this video so I don't share it for next year's grade 11s. They will not know what's going on.
There's like people in the office now. There's like people from. They say like if the location like is bad, like they need to go like right now. Like, I promise you, like, they need to go because it's too bad. People who are working, yo man. So just packing.
can watch the on. Okay, let's finish this. So for 16 to get out, what am I doing? Multiplying with 3. And therefore I have to subtract 48. So you all understand where the 48 is coming from now. Okay, shush. This 3 I now leave on the outside. Okay? It's not influencing anything. These 3 terms, they are perfect square. So when I factorize it to a bracket with a square, it will be this one square root, this one sine, and this one square root. Are you happy? Right, and then I use my calculator to calculate what is 11 minus 48. What is that going to be? Negative 37, and then I take it to the other side, it becomes the positive 37. Okay. Now, I want to say that we did 2 things different, basically. All we did is we took out the coefficient out of the first 2 terms. Then we still added the magic number, but then the second thing that we did different was to subtract it. We had to multiply with that coefficient to get out of the bracket. That's all we did differently. Now it may happen that I have this 3 here, I have the coefficient here still. So I cannot take the square root yet. Because you remember, like with the square root sums that we had homework of, it must be alone on one side before you can do that thing. So how do I get rid of that 3? I divide with 3 on both sides, then I've got x minus 4 squared equal to 37 over 3, and it's going to be gocha, and it's fine, you leave it as it is. And now I take the square root, so it's x minus 4 equal to the square root of 37 over 3. What must I remember? Plus and minus. And now my final answer in surd form, although you are very afraid of surd form, is actually very easy. You just take that 4 over. So you've got plus minus the root of 37 over 3 plus 4. And that is the answer. If now this was a sum where you want the actual value, you don't want it in surd form, I just want to show you on my calculator, all you would do is, you would take your calculator, you say this, the square root of 37 over 3 plus 4, and then you press equal to, that gives you also a surd form, and then it gives you 7,51, and then the second answer is when you put a negative there, that's what the plus minus means. The one has a positive, the other has a negative, and then that gives you an answer of 0,488, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but when it's asked to give in surd form, that is it, you are done. Happy with that? Yes. We're going to do another example, third example. Okay, last example that I want us to do, and then there's actually one more thing we need to do before you can do homework, but I suspect the bell will go beforehand because everyone is wasting our time. Okay, I hope that you notice with this example 3 that once again we have a coefficient. But the difference between example 3 and example 2 is, if you look at the term 1 and 2 of example 2, it was 3 that's going to divide by 3, which is a factor, and it's 24 that divided with 3, which was a factor. Okay. If I look at this one, the number I'm taking out is 2. Now 2 dividing with 2 is fine. But 5 divided by 2 will result in a fraction. Okay. Do not be afraid of the fractions. Don't take it to a decimal number. And one last thing you can make a note of. You remember that b value we divide with 2, ne? Do you know that dividing with 2 is the same as multiplying with a half? You know that? Okay. That makes the division with 2 when you have a fraction much easier. So we're going to work with improper fractions. It's fine. And complete it there. And you guys also remember, when you have a fraction and you square it, then you just square the top, you square the bottom. When it's a root, you just take the square root of the top, take the square root of the bottom. Nothing funny to it. Okay, so let's start. The first step says take out the 2 out of term 1 and out of term 2. Then you make the bracket minus 12, leave a space equal to 0. Okay, I want you to tell me what is that magic number going to be. Who said that? So vinnig. Huh? She said 25 over 16. She is absolutely correct. I am just extremely impressed with her quick calculation. Did you use a calculator? Ah, you should have stuck to your guns and just said, no, I'm that grand. Okay, I'm going to do it now for you. So, finding that magic number, we take this one, which is B, and we say B divided by 2, or you multiply with a half. Now the reason I'm saying it's easier to multiply with a half, because when you multiply with a half, it's just numerator times numerator and denominator times denominator. Because it's B divided by 2 squared. So now I have to square this one, and that becomes 25 over 16. Now, I can give you some advice, When you write that one there, when you add it here, you don't even have to write with the 25 over 16. I would just leave it as 5 over 4 with a square. Because remember, we're going to take the square root now. Do you remember that? Huh? I'm going to take the square root now because this is a perfect square. So you don't even have to do it there. Okay. Right, but now I'm adding it. I must also remember to subtract it. But before I can subtract it there, now I'm going to type that into my calculator. And at this stage, I type it in the calculator because I don't want to make a mistake. You have a calculator, use it. So we have there 5 over 4, close the bracket, squared. Now for this one to get out, I'm multiplying with 2. And I get an answer of 25 over 8. Do you all understand that? So it is minus 25 over 8. Okay, so now I write that 2 here. To get the bracket square, it's this one square root, this one sine, and this one square root. But you see now why I said you don't have to calculate it. Because the square and the square root will just cancel out. So it's just 5 over 4. And you can check that it works back to that. Remember, when we square a bracket, it's this one times itself, this one times this one, times 2. Then the 2 will make the 4 become a 2 again. So that's why I have 5 over 2x. And then it's this one times itself to get that one. So everything works out. Term 1 squared, term 1 times 2 times 2, and term 2 squared. Okay, now here I have minus 12 minus 25 over 8. And that gives me minus 28 over, minus 121 over 8 equal to 0. Now I can take it to the right hand side, it will be 121 over 8. Now I have to divide with 2. Dividing with 2, you can take that, you have that in your calculator, 121 over 8, divide by 2, it gives you 121 over 16. Now, you know the next step is going to be mos now the square root, né? What do you notice about that numerator and that denominator? Perfect square. Do you see that? Okay. So now I take the square root both sides. I have x minus 5 over 4 equal to 11 over 4. What must I remember? Plus and minus. And now I take the minus 5 over 4 to the other side. I'm just going to show the calculation. I have 11 over 4 plus 5 over 4. That's my one answer. And the other one is negative 11 over 4 plus 5 over 4. You all with me? Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay, when I'm doing this sum, this gives me 16 over 4. 4. Okay, and then this one, it gives me negative 6 over 4, which is negative 3 over 2. And there you have your two answers. Okay. Just give me a chance. I'm going to tell you. Now, it is important for you to know how to complete a square. And it is important for you to know why we are doing everything and where it's coming from. That's why we did investigation. But now I want to show you, you know I spoke of a formula last week that I will teach you. Okay. So I want to show you how we get the formula. Now what I'm going to do now will seem complicated. And you are not expected to be able to do this, but I want to show this to you so that you know where it's coming from, okay? So what I have here, you are welcome to copy it, but just make a note there so that you don't have to be able to do this. Okay. So I'm going to take this trinomial that is in variable form. Okay, so I'm not going to put in a value in A, B, and C. And I'm going to complete the square with these as they are. Okay. Now there's one thing that I'm going to do different. You remember that I said there are different ways of completing the square, but the way that I've now taught it to you, we can use for both. Now the way I'm just going to do this one, I'll tell you when I'm doing it. It's when we can only do that when it's an equation. When it's an expression, we can't do it. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to take out A. You remember we did that. Now we only took it out of the first two terms. Okay? Now for this one, I'm just going to take it out of all three terms, because when I take it out of all three terms, I can divide with A on both sides and it's gone. Do you understand that? But we don't want to do that when we're working with numbers, okay? Because we need that number there. So don't do that. It's just for the proof. So I am left with x squared plus b over a x plus c over a equal to 0. So this one divided with a and it cancelled out, and 0 divided with a, which is just 0. Those of you that are, whether you are writing or not writing, you must check me up, okay, so we don't make a mistake, because I have to concentrate when I'm doing this. Alright, so we took it out. Now I'm going to say a x squared plus b over ax. Then you remember we leave a space open, plus c over a, then we leave a space open, equal to 0. What is this space for? the magic number. How do I get the magic number? This one divided by 2 squared. So remember I said dividing by 2 is the same as multiplying with a half. So it will be b times 1, which is b, and a times 2, which is 2a squared. Happy? Now I'm adding it here. I must also subtract it here. This one I'm just going to calculate it. It's b squared over 4a squared. Do you understand that these two are exactly the same? Which x? Remember, you only take this value. Only the b value. But now it's b over a. Remember when it was x squared minus 4x. We only took the 4 and divide by 2 and square for the magic number, not with the x. Okay. I divided it on this side, then it became 1, and I divided it here, then 0 divided by a is gone. Okay, so this is a perfect square, these three terms. Ne? It's this one square root, this one sine, and this one square root. That's why I left it in exponential form, because I know I'm going to take the square root. And now these two, I'm going to have to take them to the other side. So it's going to, I'm just going to swap them around. This one becomes positive. So it's b squared over 4a squared. And then this one becomes negative minus c over a on the other side of the equal to sign. Right, forgot the square there, does I? Now, the next step would be to take the square root on both sides. But before I do that, I just want to simplify this thing so that it's not two terms. I want to make it one term. Now, this is fractions that's being subtracted. Now, when we want to subtract a fraction, all we need to do is get a common denominator. Now, this denominator is a, this one is 4a squared. So, therefore, the common denominator will be 4a squared. So, this b squared, it doesn't need anything. But the minus c, this one has to multiply with 4a at the top and at the bottom. Do you agree with that? So it's going to be minus 4ac. The c just multiplied with the 4a. Mamelu, you are frowning. What I did is I multiplied this with 4a and I multiplied at the top with 4a so that I'm multiplying with 1. And then a times 4a also becomes 4a squared, which is the common denominator that I wanted. Right? Now I'm taking the square root in this step. So the square is gone, this side is the square root. What must I remember? Plus minus. And now in the final step, all I have to do is take this b over 2a to the other side, right? So I have x equal to, I'm just going to write this one first. It's minus b over 2a. Plus minus. Now, quickly look here. Do you remember when we worked with surds? We said that it can happen that the top one is not a perfect square, but the bottom one is. Then we take the surd, or we take the root of the bottom one, and it gets out of the root. The same when we multiply them. We can do that with multiplication and division. Do you know what I'm talking about? Reviewer? If I have the square root of 10 over 16. I can leave it the square root of 10 over 4. Then the 16 gets out of the square root. You remember that? Yes. Okay. Now, this one is two terms. There are two terms. Ons is gebed om te rekord en te verduizen. All right. B squared, I'm going to finish, you're going to have to search. B squared minus 4ac. You cannot take the square root of that because of the two terms. But I can take the square root of 4a squared because it's a perfect square. So it's going to be plus minus square root b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Now, I want you to notice something about these two terms. They are both fractions, but what do you see about them? The denominators are the same, therefore I can add and subtract the numerators. And that brings us to the final format of it being minus b plus minus the root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Okay, this, what you see here, is the formula that I've spoken about. This formula is nothing else but completing the square. We completed the square to get to this formula. You don't back away because you're all going to disappear. You're not going to come back the last period. Sit, I want to finish. This is the formula that we will use. So when you use the formula, you are completing the square. Now I just want us to quickly, you can just look here. We can use, when I see this ax squared plus bx plus c, the a I am referring to in this formula is this a. The b I am referring to is this b, and the c is this c. So when I have a trinomial, this was example 1. Then my a value here is 1. Do you see that? My b value is negative 4. My c value is negative 5. Now I'm going to substitute into the formula for you, but you are going to do this at home, okay? And you write down this formula and you learn to get to know it. B squared minus 4ac over 2a. When I substitute, be careful of the b because this is negative b and b is already negative 4. So it has to be negative 4. Do you understand? The negative is that negative is that negative. If you miss one, you will get the wrong answers, then you get 0. Plus minus the square root of negative 4 squared minus 4 bracket 1 close the bracket minus 5 close over 2 times 1. Okay? So all I did there was substitution. There's nothing funny to eat. Now you go and practice this at home, typing it into your calculator. The way you begin is you press the fraction button first. Okay? Then you say minus negative 4, close the bracket. That plus and minus is not the little bit close to button plus or minus. It means you're going to first do a sum where you add that square root of negative 4 squared minus 4ac over 2 times 1. Okay, you understand what I did there? You type it exactly as it is. And then you get the answer of 5, which is exactly what we got. Then you don't go and retype it, you just press to the right hand side. And then you delete the plus. You put in the minus and then you get your answer of negative 1. And those were the two answers that we got previously with haki and with completing of the square. We're also getting it with the formula. Do you all understand that? Yes. Okay. 5 marks. In the exams, you can listen to this. In the exams, you will see it will probably be question 1.1.4 normally. They say, solve for x, round your answers off to 2 decimals. Then you know it's a quadratic trinomial that cannot be factorized with haki. You have to use the formula. You have to show the formula. You have to show your substitution. You get your 2 marks or your 2 answers, and it's a total of 5 marks.